be talking about opportunities for innovators in the energy transition, correct?
That's correct, yes, and talking around how the ecosystem needs to work together, and there's plenty of gaps for innovation within that ecosystem, and I think it creates a great opportunity for entrepreneurs, because actually it's an area, as some of the people have already have said, maritime decarbonisation has had less focus than other mobility modes. So actually it's a great opportunity for entrepreneurs, it's a great opportunity for private investment, and as such I think it's a very exciting area to be talking about today.
Thank you, Grant. And as a senior strategy leader at Hitachi focused on sustainability innovation, I'm sure you'll be able to share a lot with us. Please, a huge welcome to Grant.
Thank you all. Thank you very much. So yes, thank you very much again for that warm welcome. It's really great to be speaking to everyone today, and thank you to OpenTop and everyone in Valencia who's given me such a lovely and warm welcome and the fantastic trip around the port yesterday. I work at Hitachi, and my role is really to look at what industries, what segments, what countries and what technologies Hitachi should be investing in going forward. And marine decarbonisation is a key one that we think that we should be investing in, because as I sort of just alluded to, it's an area that's had slightly less focus than other forms of mobility. Myself, just touch a little bit about myself. So this is my first job in the ports industry. I was actually born in a place called Portland in England. And this is a job I had one summer. I worked in that warehouse. Now that warehouse was full of fibre optic cables. And one summer I spent the whole summer loading fibre optic cables onto a ship. And those ships, that ship and that fibre optic cable is one of just 16 fibre optic cables that connect Europe with the United States. And you think about all of the money, all of the commerce, all of the ideas that go through those cables, just 16 of them, and then you start to realise just how important maritime is and how sometimes the contribution isn't visible to everyone. In terms of decarbonisation, a lot of the focus has really been on road, and that is for a good reason. It's a large market. It is 12% of greenhouse gas emissions. And by 2030, 40% of road transport should be electrified. I think people would have hoped to be further, but that's still pretty good progress. But actually, the ton of freight shipped per year by road, very small. Aviation gets a lot of focus, especially by the environmental lobby, but actually its impact on global commerce is quite small. We probably don't think that. Most of us, from Western Europe or the United States, we're very used to getting on a plane, but the vast majority of people in this world will never get on an aeroplane. And actually it's a very small amount of goods that goes through aviation. And then we have ports and shipping, and obviously significantly most of the goods around the world go via shipping. It's obviously a huge contribution, yet a huge market. It actually is quite small greenhouse gas emissions compared with some of the other modes if you compare how much is being shipped. But by 2030, a lot fewer journeys will be decarbonised in shipping. And a lot of this is actually to do with legislation. So aviation is quite a bit smaller. But because the legislation is stronger, you actually see a lot more investable projects. So if you look at projects for eSAF, there are more eSAF projects in Europe than there is, for example, maritime e-fuels. What this says to me is this 5 trillion market, it's a huge market, and not enough people are thinking about it, which is a huge opportunity for all the entrepreneurs in this room. There is, of course, regulation that is coming down the line and that will drive change, the Fuel EU maritime regulation. That will require, by 2030, all ships over 5,000 tonnes to use shore power when alongside, and that will increase, it went on the 10T network, and that will increase to all ships in Europe by 2035. And actually companies such as MSC say they won't visit anywhere where they can't have shore power by 2035. So change is coming. And obviously there's bits around the emission trading scheme and others which will bring forward e-fuels, and a lot of companies like Maersk, MOL and others are already investing in e-fuels such as e-ammonia and e-methanol in order to make that transition ahead of these trading scheme credits coming in. What does this mean for ports though? Well, the best ports used to be those with the largest quays, or best located, or a well-protected roadstead, or deep water. But actually, going forward, a port can no longer just be a concrete dock that ships come alongside. Ports, with electrification, they'll have to provide the facilities to connect up to ships, to electrify and to charge up batteries for last mile usage, to provide shoreside power when they're alongside. But of course, it's much more complex than that, because a ship might be out in the sea, it might be delayed. It might need more charge when it comes alongside. It might not come alongside when you're thinking it's going to come alongside. The assets on board that ship, such as the battery, might not be working as they should. So actually the energy needs and understanding what you will have to provide these ships will be ever-changing. And that requires digital twins, it requires everyone talking to each other, and it requires the ecosystem supporting each other. Here's a good little example. This is a picture of the port of Barcelona. There's a cruise ship alongside, and with a crew and a container ship. So those two ships alongside on shore power, 20 MVA, about as much electricity as 5,000 homes. Quite a lot of electricity, right? Here's another picture of Barcelona. And there's 5 cruise ships alongside now. All of a sudden, you're using as much electricity as a town with 30,000 homes in it. Now, what do you size your infrastructure for? A town for 30,000 homes? Or a town of 5,000 homes? And what's the right, you can't necessarily afford to go for that larger infrastructure. So how do you predict what's going to happen? How do you manage it? How do you best optimize those resources? And for that, you need all of the systems talking to each other. Now, I actually haven't spoken much about Hitachi because I'm not particularly here to do you a sales pitch, but we make a lot of the boxes that are needed to make this system work. So static frequency converters, battery electric storage, DC to AC converters, flash charging as well if you want to decarbonize waterborne transport. We make electrical equipment for electrolyzers important in e-fuels, and of course we do EHGV. That isn't actually the challenge here. Those technologies are well understood. They exist. The challenge is making everything talk to each other, making all of the players talk to each other so that we can understand and manage those demand across the port system. You might have generation happening within the port. You might, through wind turbines or through solar. You might have ships that are coming in on different schedules. When do you need to provide that energy? When do you need to provide electricity to those ships? When can you use your own generation? When should you store it? And all of these different organizations need to talk to each other. And that's why today is important, because actually just to provide something which on paper probably sounds quite simple, which is you plug in a ship when it's alongside rather than burning fuel, you need to actually understand all of those users across a port. So the port itself, different shipping companies, ship builders, because you have to understand what power systems they're using. OEMs for propulsion, grid energy companies, on-site generation, storage, all of these you need to bring together digitally via AI, using digital twins so that you can and sensors and automation, communications and monitoring. Else you'll have to build way too much infrastructure and it will never be affordable. And I think that's where the huge opportunity really exists for a lot of entrepreneurs, is in that digital and AI space. This is an example of something that we're doing. So this is Gothenburg, and that's Stena Line, and we provided the shore power for Stena Line some time ago. Now, this is a hydrogen fuel cell, and we're using that for peak shaving in Gothenburg, and that we can use that instead of having to pay for really expensive electricity. Example of some of the innovation we're building. But even for a very small solution like that, we had to work with Stena, Power Cell Group, Linde Gas, Port of Gothenburg, a lot of players, big ecosystem. And that's why these sort of events are super important. Final thing to say is the time for this is now. This is a shore power, installed shore power connectivity, quite good in the Nordics, Netherlands, etc. Not so good elsewhere. And if that 2030 deadline is going to be hit, that's a lot of shore power. It's a lot of stuff that needs to be done now. And as I said, a lot of companies are focused on that road, rail, air decarbonisation. So that creates space for entrepreneurs, it creates space for investors, and it therefore is a great opportunity now. Even if that gets pushed back a couple of years, this will still come, especially when we start to look at things such as NOS crisis and the desire to have less local pollution. The final thing I would say, and this is super important, why again these events are super important, We need people with the right skills to do this, so we have to talk about how exciting and how interesting and how important ports are, else we won't get the people we need with these skills in order to support decarbonisation. So that would be the final thing I would say. We will have to be evangelists about this market because it's a great opportunity, and I think it's really exciting. So that was all I had to say. Thank you so much, and if there's any questions, please let me know.